Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbender, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hi, everyone. We're here pre-recording before the upcoming 2021 presidential inauguration, and expectations are high. Our nerves are very, high and sensitive. Like everyone's like just completely like,
look what happened to me from biting my nails.
And so in anticipation, right, of tomorrow, basically, so this is going to air a day after the inauguration, we figured we'd get a roundtable edition, the first one of the year, really weighing in on our individual perspectives from where we're literally sitting at and from our lenses regarding everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks, actually in the last 4 years, and then moving forward, you know, as we turn a page, if we interpret it as turning a page, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but then also, you know, what our point of view regarding, you know, what's coming, what the needs are, the challenges, just in general, you know, of everything that's going on, again, from our very unique perspectives regarding this transition, you know, that's going on in the U.S. And that is really, in my opinion, just part of, I think, just trying to get over even the Civil War. I mean, it's just insane. But we'll get into, you know, this whole discussion from our points of view. And I want to introduce our team. We have Lunna, all the way from Puerto Rico. So she's going to be weighing in from the perspective of a U.S. territory, right? And American citizens based out of, you know, one of the Caribbean islands. Then we have Xaulanda, that's also not here on the U.S. mainland. She's tuning in from St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Hi, Xaulanda. You know, which is a largely Black Caribbean community. So from that lens. And then Chris and I are going to be on this side of the pond, right? Yep. Talking from a BIPOC perspective, and then from a Caucasian white male perspective, you know, not necessarily white. We know who you are, Chris, you know.
A gringo.
So, but anyway, so
Sammy,
what?
So Sammy, quick question for those who may not be familiar with BIPOC.
Oh, BIPOC is Black Indigenous people of color, you know, or, you know, Black and brown, or people of color, or, So just, yes, thank you for the clarification. Because we've been caught in a couple of meetings like, what is that? So, it's worth the explanation. So I'm very curious to hear from Xaulanda and Lunna to see what are those conversations over the dinner table in Puerto Rico and in St. Croix about what's going on over here with recent events at the U.S. Capitol and with the upcoming, you know, transfer of power to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So I don't know, Lunna, talk to me, you know, what's going on in Puerto Rico?
I haven't been out that much. I'm trying to stay, you know, at home and taking care not to get exposed to COVID. But from what I have seen, the wounds are very deep. The Puerto Rican people are still very hurt about the way that Trump treated us after the hurricane, after the earthquakes. And I think that we are in general, we're very hopeful that things will change. And I see a period of healing, a period of starting to breathe, to go up and get some air. And there's a lot of hope that things are going to be different. From my point of view, life has taught me that not to put any expectations on anyone, but I feel hopeful too. I feel like now I can start breathing. And what I like the most about the incoming president is that he's someone that has empathy for people. He has gone through very hard times. He's experienced a lot of hardship, and I think that connection that he's showing with the people is very different and something that we were missing for a very long time. To feel that there's someone there that understands you, that there's someone there that knows what you're going through and that is going to treat you with respect, and that's what I'm hoping is going to happen from now on.
Yeah,
There's a lot of hope.
absolutely.
There's a lot of hope. Yeah.
Yes, totally, totally. So
Mhm.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that it's not all too different, from the lens of people of
Mhm.
color, and in general, just good people, period, that are interested in bridging the gaps and lessen or alleviate misunderstandings and
Mhm.
also acknowledging the grievances, right, and the challenges and the
Right.
oppression, and just being like, speak truth and
Mhm.
fight for justice, so
Right.
yeah, so yeah, that I think that resonates a lot with me, what you just said. What about you,
Mhm.
Xaulanda? What's going on in St. Croix?
Oh,
Besides the beautiful beaches, because I've seen your posts
I
on
hate her.
yeah,
I've been doing a lot of hiking out in nature with people that I know don't have COVID. It's a new way of quarantining.
yes,
Yeah.
totally.
It's been great. It's been great to get out in nature, and it's been great to connect with friends and family. I think, in regard to the subject of the state of the nation and how people are feeling right now, it's two polarizing emotions. I think everybody is feeling. Like Luna said, there's a lot of hope, but there's a lot of fear. And
Mhm.
after what happened at the Capitol, there was total outrage, basically, and people drawing the line in the sand. Whereas for the last 4 years, things have been happening, and people felt like you could explain away some of the stuff. That was like the last straw. Like all the excuses, even within the community, they were like, "Listen, if you agree with this, that's it. Unfriend me. This is not going to work," because that just goes to speak to that perspective, polarizing perspectives. The other thing that I find interesting is we are a community predominantly Black. And historically, within the Virgin Islands, we fought for our freedom. So
Mhm,
that's coming from a different perspective, okay?
mhm,
Our ancestors burned down plantations to get their freedom.
mhm,
Okay. And so what I've observed, what I found interesting is that there's a lot of people from the mainland who are Caucasian that are coming down, and some of them may have sentiments similar to Trump's. And it's becoming a little tense because our local people are saying, not here. You can't do that
mhm,
here. Go back
mhm.
where you came from with that.
But go back home where you came from.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
because
it.
we
Oh
can,
my
yeah. Our community, we're predominantly Black, but we're very inclusive. As long as you respect our culture, you respect our people, you respect our heritage. And so I think where they draw the line in the sand is when there's that disrespect of people coming from the outside here, trying to do what they want or to treat the locals, the way they don't deserve to be treated. Then you get even more of those polarizing emotions.
God.
Um, as it relates to the mainland, they're hopeful because we have Biden and Kamala going in, but there's that fear that what may have been under the radar under President Obama's terms has now come to light, and it's like in your face, and what does that mean for the future? So I think
Mm,
that's where fear comes from. So it's
yeah.
multi-layered. of emotions that,
Yeah.
people are working through.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. And the whole idea of and it happens in Puerto Rico too, because I grew up in Puerto Rico, having lived there for over 2 decades. But this ability, right? To exercise your freedom of how do you say, of expression. And my family was always pro independence of Puerto Rico, so I know about marching against the status quo and fighting for independence and all of that, and just being able to debate and present a case for something other than U.S. binding, that being bound to the U.S. And so, anyway, so I think that as Caribbean islands that are not states, that are U.S. territories, and have how do you say, held on to their culture, you have those varying levels of identity with the U.S. mainland and connection with the U.S. mainland, but also ability to be able to reject what doesn't align with your cultural values, So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a very, very interesting dynamic, What about you, Chris? What are your thoughts with everything that's going on? And and I know we were joking offline, and I'm like, Chris, we know you're not a white supremacist. Okay, you're a good person that happens to be white. And I just let's pause there with that for a minute. Let's pause there, because just for everyone out there, I want everyone to be clear that people that we talk to in the BIPOC community or in Black, Indigenous, people of color groups, right? We're clear about that. We can tell the difference between a white supremacist that whose interests and efforts and actions are rooted in hate, than a good person that just happens to be white, because you know what? I think I'm a good person that just happens to be Latina. Xaulanda is a good person that just happens to be Black Caribbean, and Lunna is a good person that just happens to be, Puerto Rican, And so,
Absolutely.
I mean, so we understand that difference, and we want to work together, to turn this page. But anyway, I digress. Please, Chris, share your share your thoughts, and please help us understand what the hell is going on.
Where to start?
I know, poor Chris.
I mean, I guess first off, I'll say, it's sad. And I've kind of seen this posted a little bit, and I tend to agree with this, that a lot of white people, when things like this happen, are always like, oh my God, I can't believe like this could happen, or where did this come from, or where did, and to me, this has been the writing was on the wall, all along here. So it's sad that being a white person, and some of you were just saying you can tell the difference between a good person who could be of any race versus a bad person of any race. And I guess as a white person in America, though, you have to understand that there is a responsibility that comes with the history and with the honestly the system, or the systemic racism that does lead to these things that people are again saying, wow, how could this happen? And unfortunately, this is America as it is. And I think, if you go to any 12-step program, the first step is admitting it, right? So like we have an issue. And then the next step is actually moving forward and doing something about it. And so I hope that the Biden-Harris administration can really step up to the plate and put their put their actions where their words are, and be politicians that really come through and follow through with their relations with BIPOC communities or anything that's been on the agenda. But really, I think showing through action is the only way to kind of bring this hopefully country back together in some shape or form. But yeah, I guess it's still too early to kind of decipher or really put it together. But as a white person who does work a lot with BIPOC communities, and seeing, getting on both sides, because a lot of white people don't know that I work with BIPOC communities, or they make assumptions and they say things around me that, would be to look the other way. And I'm like, hey, please don't, that's kind of ignorant. Please don't. Do that.
Well, I'm not going to say who, but someone called me to tell me you guys were hanging out, and someone was making these types of comments in front of you, and you just lost it. I couldn't believe it. That you like jumped.
No, I believe Chris is an ally.
I know where he stands, but the thing is, he's always so, polite and, wants to do the right thing, that I just couldn't picture Chris like telling the guy basically to fuck off and to back off, and I'm like, what? That he did what?
I would refer to it as a minor course correction.
That was a trigger. No, it was a trigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to step in. But I think that's one of the big takeaways for me, and for our team. I think as we've continued to do our work in equity in the community and edifying people and trying to help families reach social mobility with the community work and the activism that we do, with the programs that we develop from scratch to really fill in voids, and the partnerships and collaborations that we establish. I think that's a big thing that we've learned throughout the last 4 years, and that we're actually implementing as we turn the page, right? As the Biden-Harris administration, now looks to really remedy and really help build equity, across everything, healthcare and education and representation and, transportation and access and funding. I mean, we could go down the list. We don't want to bore you, but there are inequities at every single level. Law enforcement, just the whole thing. I mean, like you mentioned, it's systemic. It's like, honestly, it's a matter of just doing an overhaul of the whole bit, and really changing social contracts. But that's a whole other podcast. But what I wanted to get to was this idea that we all have to have some skin in the game, and that it's really important for us to come together and really know what our strengths are and what our values, roles, and expectations. And I just feel that the BIPOC community, Black and Brown communities, the Latino community, whatever you want to call it, it's our role now to really focus on helping build that equity. And then we need to leave it up to the Caucasian community, to figure out where you stand, and to really, and people like you, Chris, honestly, what you already do, but more like to really, you guys need to be equipped with the tools and the how do you say, the mechanisms and the approach to be able to help change the minds and hearts of the people that look like you, that are not inclusive, that don't believe in, and that are point blank racist, and just want to keep the status quo. And so I think that if more people understand that, we can really accelerate, building equity in our communities and really having a society that values human dignity and values the contributions of everybody, no matter what you look like or where you come from, And so memo to the white world out there, it's your job. We're now at least we are. I'm tired of educating, and I know Lakeisha is, I know Kelly is, I know Xaulanda is, I know Lunna is, I know all of these people that we collaborate with. We're now focused on building equity, in our community, social mobility, access, opportunity, participation, collaborations, representation, and that's it. And so if we can find more, not allies, accomplices,
Right.
but people that happen to be white that can then take on the responsibility of educating, their counterparts who are not aligned with this mindset of unity and of diversity and of everyone actually belongs, this is not just, about you, I think that would help us really transform the future of how we deal with each other, and also the impact that America can have on the world. Imagine that, imagine that if we figure this out together and are able to make a difference and then show, the world that, what, yeah, we hit rock bottom for a minute, but
we can come back.
yeah, exactly. But this is our comeback, right? And that's my hope. That's my hope, that the inauguration is like a reset button, for what is it? What is their campaign thing? I don't follow campaigns and stuff, build, what is it? Build bigger, better, or something like that. Anyway, whatever it is. It's really, the idea is just to build a solid foundation so we can all thrive, so
some of you did bring up a really good point though. And to this point, I'll be the white person who is the representation on this, but yes, it is not on communities of color to educate the white people. Yes, we need help in learning what the issues are from within those communities, but just like how it's important to have representation in BIPOC communities, in the movies and in books and things like that, so kids can feel inspired, is the same thing. White people need to be representative of themselves and help other white people realize the ignorances and the naivety of what's really happening in the world. But I just thought that was a important point, because a lot of white people are like, well, I don't know what to do, and I don't live around a lot of communities of color or people of color, so I don't know what to do to fix it. But really, it's like you have to do the educate yourself, then start, putting yourself around those type of conversations, and then you can actually activate change. But you have to be the change, and you can't wait for communities of color to do it.
Change has to start with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes you just have to move. Come out of your comfort zone. It's like, I don't know what, I was talking to somebody like recently, like, was it yesterday, over the weekend, that there was like, oh, because, it's like, how do we help those people that are suffering? And I'm like, it's 20 minutes from here. Like, we live in a pretty, like in the suburbs, but it's not too far from here. You want to come? Because I go all the time, So I'm like, this is not too complicated. You really want to be, an advocate. You really want to understand. You want to really feel real empathy, like real empathy. Come along, And so anyway, I honestly feel that, there are a lot of excuses, right? For some people, but I think that, there's a lot of fear on both ends, right? And I think just to talk, and maybe you can tell us, Chris, if this is true or not, but this is my observation. And Xaulanda and I was discussing this a little while ago, is that one of the biggest fears I feel as we are experiencing this demographic shift in the US of more blended communities, of more blended families. I'm just happened because you know what? Love conquers all. When you start having those Black and brown babies in your family, I mean, you can't help but fall in love with the families, and that's what's happening, So we're literally experiencing what they're calling the minority majority shift in this country. And I just feel that, white supremacists really, are still fighting the Civil War, you know, because they want that the status quo of being in power, whatever that means,
Yep.
you know, and all of that. And so that's what that was 2 weeks ago at the Capitol. It
Yep.
was just an extent. They were even saying it, 1776, whatever the hell, you know. And I'm like, okay, yeah, they're stuck. They're stuck there. But the bottom line is, I just feel that that level of hate is rooted in fear, in fear
Oh,
of being
absolutely.
the oppressed,
Yep.
Yeah.
and fear of being the subject
Losing,
of hate.
losing
You know?
control. Yeah. About control.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You agree
About
with
losing
that, Luna?
control. Yeah. 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 It's about losing control.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so,
I
and
think
so
not only that, I think that there's also the realization by so for example, when I grew up, the beauty of growing up in the islands is that when I grew up, my governor looked like me, my senator looked like me, my doctor looked like me, everybody in power looks like me. So even though we looked at American TV, we may not have seen much representation of people who look like us. Within our community, we saw people that look like us. And I think with the minority majority shift, there's this realization that I'm not seeing as much of me out there. There are more BIPOC people on TV. There are more Black and brown people in movies. There's a higher sense of visibility of what Black and brown people are accomplishing now, where, you know, if you're looking at it from their lens, they're like, I'm not seeing as much of me out there as I have in the past. And that can instill some fear, you know, when you don't see yourself represented. And so, not that I agree with it and not that I acknowledge it, but I can understand it to that extent. But I think overcoming that fear is just really trying to understand each other on an individual basis. I mean, it's hard when you sit down and have a conversation with somebody face to face and say, I hate you. It's
yeah.
that hard.
Yes.
It's easy on social media. You can scroll all you want on social media. When you sit down with a white person and a person of color and say, I hate you, that's way harder to do,
Yeah.
you know? And so maybe it's just having those one-on-one conversations and starting to understand each other where we can really start to make that shift and reduce the level of fear, you know?
And I would say I think and this plays completely into fear, and I do agree, because fear is one of the biggest motivators. And even when I did the documentary about Hurricane Maria, it was really just to introduce people to the Puerto Rican community and somebody who went through that, so they can build an empathy, because fear, I believe, is what causes hatred, because you fear the unknown. And to that point, I think a deeper level is a lot of the people who do have these beliefs, or who would be considered people who would fit into the group or the demographic that stormed the Capitol. A lot of them did have their ancestors maybe did fight in the Civil War and for the Confederate side. So I can understand a level of pride of saying, well, if I don't, or if I go against that belief, then I'm saying my family history, or that my grandfather or great grandfather was wrong. But in order, you have to break cycles.
But they were.
Exactly. and that's the thing,
I thought about it and you said it.
Right.
I would know that.
I was delicately getting there, Sammy.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm not
That's a straight shooter.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No. Yeah. But they were wrong. So, I mean, but so I do understand it, and but that level of pride, you have to put that pride in maybe saying, well, hey, they fought for what they thought was right, but now that I know better, know better, do better, now I can make a difference, and I can take on that same gusto or pride that they had, and just apply it or reconstruct it in a more positive way that applies to today. And I just think that I can see where that mindset comes from. I'm from a family of immigrants, so I I don't have that history here in the United States as a white person, but I have pride in my ancestors, and if they did something wrong, I would have a hard time admitting that. But at the end of the day, you do have to admit it if you want to move forward. And you know, this is
Yeah.
America, and America has had a lot of it's been looked up to for the longest time as a place where people come to escape oppression and to be free and to be able to grow and survive as a family and sustain as a family. But that is a dream that has been allotted to everyone, and so you need to let go of that control if that's something you are trying to hold on to.
Yeah. I'm just hoping. So let's talk about what we hope, right? That this change brings, as we wrap up this episode. And so what is your hope, Lunna?
Well, I hope things get better in any way for everyone, that everyone has opportunity, equal opportunity. So basically that, I think that we went so deep that anything is going to be better. So just hoping that things are going to get better, and that slowly, I know this is a process. It took us a long time to get where we are. So it's going to take time to improve. I am very hopeful that it's going in the right direction. It's going to go in the right direction, and that's really my hope. And I'm eager to do my part in everything, because it's not just for them. They don't have to do it. We have to do it. Although it sounds like a cliche, but this is a time to come together, because we cannot do this by ourselves. We have to do it together. We have to get out of the silos that we have been going in the past years, and then we have to. And this COVID thing, it's taught us a lesson as well, and that's precisely that we're connected. That the thing that affects you affects me. So I think that's also a lesson that we learned with the COVID thing, and that will, if we choose to learn that lesson, is going to help us move forward as a group, as a citizens of the earth, not just as a black, indigenous, or white, or whatever. We're all people. Inside, we're all the same. So.
What about you, Xaulanda?
Wow, that was a good one. That's a hard one to follow, Luna. I guess just to piggyback on what she's saying and to expand a little bit more, I think I would hope for some consistency. And when I say consistency between what is said and what is done and how we treat others. I think for me, it's just felt like we've been in the twilight zone, because you hear one thing being said and another being done, and the unpredictability creates anxiety. And so, one of the things I'm hopeful for, because I was looking at the news recently and they were talking about how Biden plans to implement certain things on his first day that he was talking about in his campaign. And so what you said you were going to do, I'm hopeful that your actions are going to be aligned, because I think that's going to be critical, even as bringing the two parties together, the two polarizing segments of our nation together. The only way you can build trust is when you're consistent with what you say and what you do, and people can understand, okay, I can to some extent predict that this person is coming from a good place. So that's my hope. That's my hope, that, on an individual basis, we can do it, but then we can do it nationwide, and then we can do it globally, and ultimately just make the world a better place for everybody to live. So, yeah.
That's great. What about you, Chris?
I guess I think I'm hopeful for just America to start putting their neighbors and their country ahead of their party, and focus on unity instead of division. If there was as much support for a wall, I think there could be more support for bridges to connect us instead of divide us. So I'll just leave it at that.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I think
Make that a tagline.
That was awesome. I love that, Chris. And you're absolutely right. And that I think that's the sentiment. And I feel hopeful that we can accomplish it, that we can accomplish all of these things that we're talking about, with honesty, transparency, empathy, grace, grace, sometimes it's like you can't, talk about the wall. You can't fight against a brick wall, and sometimes you just need to take a detour and then you'll get there, and so then I'm very, very hopeful of the youth. I am so inspired by youth. They're not attached to all of these like crazy divisions and stuff that our older generations are, and I'm really, really hopeful. And I'll leave you with this. My son Pedro, and he's 13 years old, always locked up in his room. He doesn't talk to, he barely is like, are you alive? Because it's like, and he's into gaming and all that stuff. And so when the Capitol building, insurrection happened, we were going to go out for a walk, and he was waiting for me to finish work. And I had like 50 texts telling me, are you seeing what's happening? So when I finished work, I went to check the TV, and he comes up and he's like, hey, are we going to go out for the walk? And I'm like, yeah, just give me 5 minutes. Holy crap, look what's happening. And so he stood there for 5 minutes watching. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go for the walk. Because, you need to take advantage when they want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
So we went. And the first thing that he told me was, wow, I can't believe that just happened in DC. And I said, yeah, I know, it's crazy. And he's 13. And he tells me, that's really sad that they would do that. And I'm like, sad? I mean, I get it, but what do you mean? And he says, well, that they would not love themselves enough. That they hate themselves so much that they would tarnish their character and their principles and by doing something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, from the mouth of babes, And so it demonstrated to me that sometimes we think our kids are disconnected, don't understand, or that they really have a lot of insight, and I'm hopeful for the youth, that they grow up being like that, like transparent. He's very, right? These kids nowadays, they're like raw, and so But you want that. You want transparency. You want honesty, and then we need to teach them grace. To like bring it down a notch or two. That's our responsibility. But I'm with you guys all the way, and I think this was a really powerful conversation, and I just want to let you all know that I can't wait to work on all these exciting projects that we have lined up for 2021 to, help build equity in our communities. Okay, so love you guys, and I miss you.
Yeah, likewise.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.